Welcome back, guys. Today we are going to be talking about how cells are able to maintain something called homeostasis. So we've already learned about their organelles and you've done your projects and hopefully those are turned in. So we know that cells are a collection of interworking parts, but why? Like, what is their end goal? So we're going to learn about how that goal is homeostasis, what homeostasis is, and then we'll talk about the cell membrane, which is one of those major components of the cell that lets it do homeostasis. Okay, so this definition right here, they put it as our key concept. This is going to be on your test, so make sure you know what this word means. So homeostasis is the regulation and maintenance of internal environments. So basically, it's the relatively stable internal conditions. Stable internal conditions. So homeo looks like the prefix homo, which means same, and stasis, like a stasis field. That's, you know, like in a science fiction movie, someone is caught in a stasis field and they have to stay the same, their conditions the same. So that's what homeostasis is. Okay. So control systems help us to maintain homeostasis. So this is going to be a little bit hard. I think I have a better diagram on the next slide. But first, for homeostasis to happen, we need to recognize a change has happened. So there's something called sensors. Those can be any kind of nerves in your body. So it can be maybe a receptor in your bloodstream. It says, hey, your blood sugar level is too low. So it's going to trigger eventually the response that makes you feel hungry. So you go and you fix it. It can also be, oh, hey, it's way too hot. Like those heat sensors can feel that. So that information gets sent to the control center, which is usually your brain. So that input gets sent to the brain. It's like, hey, brain, by the way, there's something weird going on here. It's way too hot. So the brain says, okay, I'm gonna do something about that. So then it sends a message through a communication system. This can be different types of things. They deliver messages to the target organs or tissues. Sometimes it's still your nervous system. Like if you touch something hot and your brain sends the message to jerk your hand away, it has to send that message to the nerves. But if your blood sugar gets low, instead of sending it to your nerves, it might send the message to your liver so that it can release glycogen, which we learned was how humans store carbohydrates, right? So the target is wherever the message is going to. So sensor feels there's something wrong. Control center receives the message and decides what to do about it. The communication system delivers that message from usually the brain, and then the target is whatever you need to do something. If you want a less biological example, let's say you've got a burglar alarm on your house, right? And the alarm goes off. So the sensor detects there's someone there and the alarm goes off. The control center, that would be like whatever security company, you have ADT or whatever, and they're like, oh, hey, I detected that there is a break-in at this location. So then they will send that to the police department. So they communicate to the police department, and then the police department comes out to check what was going on and fix the change. Okay? So here's another example. This has it's a little bit tidier. So if you're taking notes, this might be an easier way for you to write it. So this is like if you touch a hot stove. So the nerves in your skin detect the heat. Your brain receives information that the stove is hot, then the nerves tell your arm that it needs to move, and then the target ultimately is your muscles that jerk your hand away so that you're not damaging yourself. Okay, so there's two kinds of feedback. There's positive and negative feedback. So positive feedback, we want to increase the change. So if something happens, we want more of that to happen. So when you bleed, like you got hurt, it detects that there's a leak in your circulatory system. So those few platelets clotting together will trigger more platelets to start clotting together because we want a bigger change than what's already happened. I would think another one would be if a fire alarm goes off, then you want to increase the change there, like one sprinkler will go off and then all of them go off. So also growth hormones to stimulate cell division. They want to increase the change. So it's positive feedback. So negative feedback, it's where we don't want the change. So positive, we want more change. Negative feedback, we want less change. This is actually super common. This is how air conditioners work. An air conditioner detects that, say, the temperature is too high. It's too hot in the room. So then it sends a message to the air conditioner to kick on and lower that temperature to counteract that change. I tell this to my students all the time. They complain my room is too cold and I need to turn the air conditioner off. And I tell them it's negative feedback. It detected the room was too warm, so it turned the air on. This can also be this example in this diagram. What they're showing is you breathe to counteract the change of a buildup of carbon dioxide in your body. So you hold your breath and your brain starts to detect that, hey, the carbon dioxide levels are getting just a little bit too high. We might want to do something about that. And so that panic, like the intense urge to breathe, that's your brain constantly poking you, say, hey, friend, you need to counteract the change. You need some oxygen. So that's what they're showing in this diagram here. Okay, here's this definition again. If you haven't copied it down, copy it down. Homeostasis involves keeping the internal environment within set ranges. You don't want your body to get super hot or super cold. You don't want to eat too much, but you also don't want to starve your body. So there's like this narrow set of conditions that's comfortable for not just you, but for any living thing. So that's homeostasis in a nutshell. Here's some examples. You're gonna be asked about examples on your unit test. Write these down. Be able to identify these examples. Maybe if they're slightly different, you have to be able to tell what examples of homeostasis are. So like eating when you're hungry, sweating to cool down when you're too hot, animals migrating when it's wintertime. All of these are examples of homeostasis. So know it, study it, love it. Okay, so this is the first section on homeostasis. So let's talk about cell membranes real quick. And you're like, Miss Vance, nothing you ever do is real quick, and you're right. Okay. So cell membranes, these are one of the key ways that your cells are able to actually maintain homeostasis. You don't want just anything coming in and out of your cell, so we need some kind of barrier. And with your cell analogies, chances are that this is in there somewhere. Talking about cell membranes as a barrier. Okay, so cell membranes are composed of two phospholipid barriers, or layers rather. I told you this was coming back. So in this picture, these weird little pink blobs, these are individual phospholipids. So we have the polar head, which is the round part, and the two little dangly things, those are the nonpolar tails. And those nonpolar tails want to face each other so they can get out of the water. They don't want to be out hanging out in the water. So they bond to each other instead. Because remember, polar likes polar, nonpolar likes nonpolar. Okay, so cell membrane, one of its main functions is to form a barrier between the inside and the outside of the cell. It needs to distinguish that, or else it could not carry on life. It couldn't do it. And then it also controls the passage of materials. So at the same time, while we want to keep foreign, like bad stuff out, we also have to be able to get good stuff in. We can't just have an impenetrable wall. We don't want a fortress, or else how would the cell get food or anything? So it needs to be able to decide what comes in and what comes out. And when I say decide, there's no brain in there. The nucleus isn't sitting there like, I think I really need more sugar today. It doesn't really make those decisions like that. It's not a brain. Okay? So cell membranes, remember that each phospholipid has a polar phosphate head and a nonpolar fatty acid tail. The head is hydrophilic, meaning it loves water. That's literally what it means. Hydro is water, and philic or phil, that means loving. Okay, so it loves water. The tail's hydrophobic, meaning it's scared of water, which it doesn't dissolve in water. And another cool thing is if you take these phospholipids and you just drop them in a thing of water, they are automatically going to form like a little clump with all the tails pointing in and the heads pointing out, which is pretty cool. So there's other molecules that are going to be embedded in the membrane. Let's go back up. So in this diagram, we have all kind of stuff. You might want to pause the video and make a rough sketch of this. Your activity today, you're going to be playing with this, but you need to know roughly the sorts of things that are in here. There's probably going to be a multiple select question on your test asking you which things are a part of a cell membrane, and you're going to need to know these things. So we've got the actual like double layer, but we also have these carbohydrates and proteins. The really silly way to think of this, your body is very much, I hate to say it, the proteins and carbohydrates on the outside are like their gang colors. And I can hear some, like the little record, scratch, yeah, I get it. But cells have to say that they're part of you, that they're part of the group. This is how your immune system works. If those cells don't have the right markers, don't have the right colors on, your immune system is going to jump them, okay? So these markers, they determine whether or not your body's going to recognize your cells as part of you. And what happens if that doesn't work right, if you've ever seen someone with rheumatism or psoriasis or lupus, these are all diseases where your immune system is not recognizing your cells as part of you, so they attack your own cells. That's the whole autoimmune disease thing. That's what's happening. Okay, so those are super important. Also, some of those act as receptors. With COVID-19, they were able to determine like what sort of receptors the virus is able to bind to. And that's why viruses only tend to affect like a certain species or a certain type of cell, is they've got to have that carbohydrate chain or protein chain that matches their outer layer for them to attach to. Okay, that was kind of an aside. So you also have cholesterol. Cholesterol isn't always bad. In biology, we actually need it to help reinforce our cell membranes. Those little phospholipids, they naturally kind of move around, but that cholesterol can help stabilize them and anchor them together so that the whole cell membrane doesn't just pop apart. And we also see these proteins. I don't know if you can see when I put my cursor over them, but there's a protein channel that's basically like a doorway in your cell membrane. So just like a fortress, it wants to keep things out, but you have to have a way to get things in when you want them to. And that's what protein channels do. Things that couldn't ordinarily get through the cell membrane can go through a special protein channel, like a doorway. Okay, so the protein, backing up. So cell membranes use something called the fluid mosaic model. What this means is it's not just a box. There's all kinds of little pieces that can move around each other like a mosaic in art. All the little pieces are like a mosaic in art, and it can move around and do different things. It's not just one set thing. All right, that's really bad explaining it. The way I could think of it is, let's say you're blowing bubbles on water, right? They hold together for the most part, but they can move around. And that's what we see with the cell membrane. These pieces can move around a bit. And there's a whole different variety of molecules, and that's where it gets the mosaic part. Okay, so the cell membrane is something called selectively permeable. If you're taking notes, write that down. Selectively permeable. This means that some molecules can cross while others cannot. That's what selective means. So if a school is selective, they don't just let anybody in. They have a selection process. They only want certain individuals to come to their school. So things can get in the cell membrane, but not just everything can, if that makes sense. So in this picture, the small little water molecules, those can make it through the cell membrane. Those bigger things, maybe they're sugars or whatever, they can't do it on their own. So that's basically what this is saying right here. Some molecules can cross while others can't. Okay, so some of those proteins on there are something called receptors. Okay, that can change the shape of the cell to make it do different things. Maybe the cell, like a sugar molecule, binds to a receptor, and so that triggers the cell trying to basically eat, like it tries to Pac-Man something. It'll engulf it and bring it inside the cell. All right, so just these intracellular receptors, this is missing extra, it should be extracellular membrane receptor. So there's some on the inside and some on the outside, is all you need to know. These receptors are important. That's how they found out that COVID-19 isn't just a respiratory virus. They found research, or they researched it, and they figured out that it's a receptor that it holds, like the receptor that COVID binds to is found not only in the lungs, but also in your circulatory system. So that's why there's all the weird illnesses attached to it, like COVID toes or heart issues, because it's attacking the circulatory system as well. It has the same receptors. That makes sense. Okay, so that is what we're covering for notes today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what your assignment looks like. So you have a web quest. Do not try to finish it all today unless you have extra time in your static group or whatever. I am not anticipating you to do the whole thing today. It's supposed to be part today and part tomorrow, which is why it's due tomorrow. So your web quest involves this game called Cell Defense. So what you're going to do is you're going to click the link, and for those of you that struggle with some of our other web quests, remember, if you see blue text that's underlined, that's generally a link you can click on in a web quest, okay? So Cell Defense, the plasma membrane. So if you're starting for the first time, we're gonna click Start a New Game. All right, so it says press the space bar or click here to continue. So I'm pressing my space bar. Okay, so on your web quest, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is click the Build a Membrane one. So we're going to click Build a Membrane, and it's going to give you this information here. So the first part of your web quest, those answers are going to be in this introductory information. So you're going to read through it, and you're going to click the space bar to get through it. So here they give us some more information. Zoom in. All right, so this is a zoom in of what it's showing me right here. Oh, okay. So here it is. It's still giving us some more information. You write what you need to on your assignment. I hope you can hear me over this music. I was not expecting that. So what I can do, I can turn it off. So you click I understand. It's giving you the controls and telling you what's going on. It tells you can flip this around. I understand. Thought I turned the sound off. Okay. So what you're going to do in the first part of this game, it's a phospholipid. So I get to drag it over here, and I'm making the cell membrane on this first part.
Phospholipid.
So let me show you how we flip it around. So I line it up here, and I click this button, and it flipped it right there. So you're going to fix the breach, and it's going to give you some more information. You're just going to follow the directions and work your way through it. I'm trying to give you something to mix it up a little bit. Please contact me if you have any questions about the information today. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.